Hey Dad, what you doing?
I'm designing an orientation packet for a new board member to a nonprofit.
What's that?
Well, would you mind if I showed you?
Sure.
Well, a new board member for a nonprofit has to govern the nonprofit. And for them to understand what they need to do, they first need to understand this word.
Mission.
Yep, mission. And I like to divide mission into 4 parts. And one part is, do you know what the mission is? You got to know what the mission of the nonprofit is for you to understand what the organization does for the community. And you have to understand the history of the mission and the organization and how the mission plus the history tie together. Then I break it into another block. Do you believe it? Do you believe the mission? Do you say to yourself, I agree with it, I buy in, I'm a part of the mission? The third block is, do you understand how the mission integrates with actions? The nonprofit does things, and it has to do things with the mission in mind. And lastly, and most importantly, you have to understand that all of those actions start and end with that mission. Everything a nonprofit does has to focus on this mission.
Okay.
You know what comes next?
No.
There's 4 pillars. One pillar to good governance for a trustee is what we like to call fiduciary. Do you know what that means?
No clue.
It's kind of a funny word, right? Fiduciary?
Yeah.
Well, fiduciary is when you talk about conserving the assets of an organization. It's when you look at the resources of the organization. You ask questions like, are our actions lawful? That means, are we breaking any laws? Are they ethical? Is it the right thing to do? You also ask questions like, can we afford it? Can we afford to do what we want to do? Or maybe questions like, they came and audited the books, our finances. Did we pass? Are we doing things right? And maybe if we join with another nonprofit, we ask the question, should we merge? That's what fiduciary means. Do you want to know what another pillar is?
Sure.
Another successful pillar for governance is what I like to call board development. Oh no. Board development. Do you know what that is?
No.
Board development is when you as a trustee talk about oversight of the nonprofit. And I like to call that generative, which is very important, oversight. The board just can't look at the things like the money that's coming in and going out. It's got to question assumptions. Like, oh, we can do that, and instead of taking things for granted, right? You've got to question those things. You also have to team up with the executive director or CEO to find creative solutions to problems. And fiduciary responsibilities are one thing, but board development means you need to get in the game. You need to be a part of the nonprofit. You need to help out. You want to hear more?
Sure.
You know, we talked about some pillars, but there's more to talk about.
Like what?
Well, another pillar of good governance for a trustee that's brand new that they need to know about is what I call board performance. You know, as a trustee, you have a job to do, and you have to make sure that you do a good job. That means that you need to show up with your other board members to the meetings. You can't be absent. That's no good. And you also have to volunteer and help out with the staff when they're doing things. You can't just be on the board. You know, the boardroom's over here and you got a little table and you're all sitting around the board, right? Well, that's only part of your job. You got to come on over here and get involved. One tricky thing is knowing not to micromanage. Do you know what that is?
Sort of. I've heard it before.
Yeah. Let's say you got a bunch of staff members in the organization and they're working on a problem. You can't be this guy. You know, telling them what to do, shaking your finger, blah, blah, blah. You can't do that. You can't micromanage. And you also have to be committed to the mission. Right?
Right.
You got to make sure your actions go back to that every single time. The last pillar is what I call strategic planning. You know what that is?
No, I've heard of strategic retreat, but not planning.
Well, strategic planning means you're going to look to the future. It doesn't mean just a dream about things that are better. You've got to do more than that. You've got to plan for the future. Right?
Right.
You've got to determine what can be done. You got to know the difference between capacity and capability. Do you know what the difference is between those?
Just tell me.
Well, capacity is, do you have the resources? Right?
Right.
Do you have room? Okay? Room to expand, room to grow, people to help you grow. You know what capability is?
Nope.
Skills and talents.
Well, that was pretty simple.
Do you have the right people and tools to help you do more mission? You want to see what it looks like when it's all together?
Sure.
Well, when it's all together, this is what you have. You have mission, right? And the mission is the foundation, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have a pillar over here and a pillar over here. Remember we talked about that funny word? Fiduciary?
Yeah.
That's one pillar. And then we talked about board performance. That's another pillar. And then over here you have yet another pillar. We said that was board development. right?
Right.
And then we had that last pillar over here, which is strategic planning, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, when you put all these things together, the mission is what props up the pillars and supports the pillars. And if you interact or use these pillars, you prop up governance. You support good governance. And when you have good governance, you support the staff of the nonprofit, and you also support the CEO or the executive director of the nonprofit. And when you do that, you have a solid foundation. And that's what a trustee needs to know before they start the job.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah.
Hey, thanks.
Thank you.